welcome to Special People, Extraordinary Times. This is a special edition of the veterans of the war in Vietnam. We interviewed two men who were in that war. They have different stories. They fought in the same years. They fought in the same section of Vietnam, and they came away with two very different stories. Bob Henry was a Marine who had, nobody had a great experience in Vietnam. But Bob Henry's story is of a man who was very proud to have served his country. And we're going to see his version of how it was to be in Vietnam right now.
I did my basic training at Camp Pendleton, California, in San Diego.
And then right overseas to Vietnam?
Actually, I did some schools battalion training in California at Camp Pendleton, and then after I think it was 9 months, they sent me to Vietnam.
And what were you doing there? What was it that your command was doing?
My MOS was 3016, which is diesel mechanic. They trained me to be a diesel mechanic, so I was attached to a motor transportation outfit. We moved troops and supplies around Vietnam, Da Nang, and Hoa Valley. And basically, as a mechanic, I was a 50 gunner in the transport troop. So I rode on the gun rings.
And how long were you in country, as they say?
A year.
A year is a long time.
A long time.
Under fire all the time?
No, I couldn't say we were under fire all the time. You're under threat of fire all the time, but it wasn't. A lot of people think it was blood and guts in combat every day, but it just wasn't. It might have been in some areas. I can't say that I was in it that much. I saw more than I wanted to see and was involved in some difficult tasks at times, but you see people hurt and killed and children maimed and wounded and innocents. You begin to question a lot of things.
Yeah. How did you know the Vietnamese people from the Viet Cong? How do you know who's who? I mean, they didn't wear uniforms.
They did not, but the ones who you didn't get along with were shooting at you.
You figured they were the enemy?
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't too hard.
So I know that you men, and I guess women who were in Vietnam, don't like to talk about it, had a very hard time. Did you have a hard time when you got back?
Adjusting, yeah, maybe. I was, of course, I was a young guy. I was 20 years old when I came back, and probably went through most of the same things most 20-year-olds went through. I didn't know anything else. I knew serving my country was the thing I had to do, or I believed that that's what I had to do.
Right.
And I did it to the best of my ability. I wouldn't take $1 million for the experience, but I wouldn't give you a penny to do it again. I'm glad I did what I did, whatever I did. I did my part, and I can stand up for that. I'm proud to be in the Marine Corps. I don't know that people ever get over war or combat. I think that lives with you all your life to some degree.
Yeah.
I know at my age now that I still think about it from time to time, and I have occasionally will have dreams about it.
Nightmares, sure.
So, but they're not as frequent as they used to be.
No, your life is better now.
Life is better now. Well, I'm moving forward. That's It's one of the things they teach us to do in the Marine Corps, is overcome.
Stefan Keisman was a young man who was in the Army and was sent to Vietnam. And his story is not really about what happened to him in Vietnam as much as it is about what happened to him when he came home. Because it was an unpopular war. People in the United States somehow, or maybe it was the way Stefan saw it, but they didn't treat him like a homecoming hero. They treated him, because they didn't like the war, they kind of took it out on the veterans of that war. And it destroyed this man's life in many ways. So it's a very sad commentary on some of our returning veterans. And now we're going to see his story.
I was drafted back in 1967, and I was sent to Vietnam in May of '68. It was a controversial time.
Yes.
And a lot of us in Vietnam, in combat, in the jungles anyway, we saw the war firsthand, and we knew that it was an unwinnable war.
You knew that?
We knew that because we just looked at the mountain ranges from the jungles, and that's where the North Vietnamese army was dug in. And we would have been there for the next 100 years, and we still wouldn't have gained any ground. We had a war which, unlike the World War II veterans, who were very close while in the service and after they came home, guys who came back from Vietnam, a certain number of us, not everyone, but a certain number of us tended to just go off and live our own lives. Just tried to blend into society.
It was a very different war.
Yes,
Stefan.
very different war.
And you were treated differently returning.
Well, we weren't treated badly or well. It's just that we were neglected. We were just totally.
Just tell me, what was the name of your unit, your battalion, your command? You were an infantryman.
Yes.
And in what unit?
It was the 196th Light Infantry Brigade,
Mm-hmm.
and I was in D Company, Delta Company.
Right.
And I can't break it down any more
No,
than
I
that.
know.
Just by memory. You know.
And so you were in central Vietnam, is that what
Yes.
you said?
Yes. Between Da Nang and Chu Lai.
Between Da Nang and Chu Lai.
Yes.
And how long were you there?
1 year.
1 year felt like an eternity.
When you're in the jungles, most of that year, it seems like it's forever. It's eternal.
And the heat and the humidity were something to be dealt with.
Oh, something. It was 120 or 30 degrees during the summer, the hottest months, and we were in full gear, carrying approximately 70 pounds, sometimes more, if you carried an M60 machine gun or you were a radio man carrying a radio. And I seen men pass out. I don't know, it was pretty much
because of the heat.
Because of the heat. But I've also seen men who acted extremely macho, and they were bullies, who, when they did encounter actual combat, they just cracked up. And in one case, there was a guy who curled up in a fetal position, and he was a man just before this particular battle who had a big mouth and constantly wanted to get into action.
Nobody knows how they're going to react
That's
in
very
times
true.
of stress.
That's very true.
Nobody really knows
Yes.
until you're put to the test, and you guys were put to the test.
Hopefully I won't have to go through that again. I'm not looking forward to something
Hopefully
like that.
nobody will have to go through that.
Hopefully
kind of
nobody
thing,
will. Yeah, men or women, by the way.
Men or women.
Right.
For OCTV, I'm Elaine Kugelman, and I hope that you have learned something from the men who were in Vietnam. We are very proud of our Bob Henrys and of our Stefan Keismans. So thank you for watching.